Many of you know that in our household, besides Jack and Olivia, we have two lovely dogs. Chewy, who came from Kansas, and Maisie, who is a Michigander. We got her in Michigan. And Maisie is about 2 years old right now. She's getting close to 3. And I really don't think, if you've met her, you probably have experienced this, there could be a more lovable or loving dog. She fiercely wants to love you a lot. So this is Maisie. That's Maisie. I mean, look at her smile. Come on, right? Like, she's the best. This is her personality to a T. This is the day that we got Maisie. She wants to be held like a toddler all the time. Like, that has not changed at all because she's all about the affection. These are common poses of Maisie. She takes her paws and wraps them around you as tight as possible because she just loves you so much. You can be gone from the house for 2 minutes and come back, and it's like you've been gone for 5 years, and she hasn't seen you, and she just needs to love you. And then she takes her big neck, and it's like an ostrich, and she like whips it around your neck, and she's like, "Don't put me down." She's so sweet, and she loves her family so much, and yet 95% of the time, this is Maisie. But there's another 5% that's kind of the worst, that she can be a total stinker. We have the cuddly, hold me like a toddler Maisie, the never leave me, I am yours forever Maisie, and then we have this Maisie. And this Maisie, look at her rear end like up in the air. Do you guys like know what that means? Like, she is ready to run. She loves to be outside. And we experienced it this morning, right? Like, she would not come in. She knew she was going to get put away, and I went out, and then Corey went out, and then Jack went out, and then Olivia went out. And finally, we had to trick her to get her inside. But she loves to be outside. If she could be outside all day long, she would. She loves that freedom and the wind in her curly hair. She just loves it. It's irresistible. And sometimes Maisie's divided love for her family and for the outdoors kind of gets her into trouble. So let me explain this a little bit. In the summer, this past summer, I started to have a really great routine on Thursdays because that's our home day. I would go to the gym in the morning, and then I would come home, and then I would walk the mile to my favorite coffee spot and get coffee and then walk back. So by the time I've done my workout at the gym, because I'm not the most fit, so it takes a lot of exercise, it wipes me out, and then do a mile walk there and a mile walk. My legs are rubber, like there is not much left. And I'm walking down our little dead-end street, and I see Corey bolt out of the house and a yellow blur like out of the door as well. And Maisie said somehow when a delivery man had come up, she had pushed the door because she just wanted to say hi, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm free. This is wonderful." And so I could see this happening, and our street is, the street at the end is Main Street. It's busy, it's super busy. So I drop everything I have, my phone, my keys, my coffee, and I get down thinking she's gonna run to me, right? And I'm down, and it's hard even to crouch because my legs are so rubbery. No, forget it. She's like, "No, never mind." And she literally beelines past me. Well, at that point, I kind of lose my ever-loving mind. And I start chasing after her, but I can't even feel my legs, so I don't even know how I'm actually moving. And the best thing I can think to do in that moment is to scream her name at the top of my lungs, because then maybe at one point she'll realize I'm really serious. So she literally goes into Main Street, is running around, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, something's going to happen right now, and it's going to be bad. And she goes down Main Street, and she thinks she's having a great time. And then she goes down the street right over here, and she goes down here, and she's running up and down. And then it's day camp, so she sees all the kids that are out in the playground, and she's thinking, this is great. So she runs over, and it probably wasn't the best thing, because I'm like, "Children, let my dog come to you." Like, these kids at that point, because I look crazy and I'm in my workout clothes, they don't know it's me. And some stranger is telling them, "Have my dog come to you." But I'm just doing anything I possibly can to catch this stinking dog who is having the best day of her life. And while I was running like a mad woman through Royal Oak, screaming my fool head off, why was I doing that? It's because I love her so much. I do. I love this dumb dog so much. And this is the thing. Maisie knows. Like, I know that they're dogs, but they know. She knows how much we love her. She understands that bit of affection. And she knew that I was coming after her, but she was having a blast, like an awesome time. I knew the danger. I knew what could happen, but in that moment, she was completely blind to it. She could have cared less, and yet as mad and as terrified as I was in that moment, it didn't diminish my love for her. In fact, it probably ramped it up more because I was so concerned. In that moment, I didn't just stand there and say, well, let's hope for the best, right? Maybe she'll come home. No, I was in hot pursuit, and I mean hot pursuit. And I feel like today, if Jesus were teaching, he might not use a sheep for his story, but he would use a dumb dog like mine, right? But this is the picture that we get from what he was teaching this morning in the Word. In the Gospel of Luke, the religious leaders, they were grumbling again because Jesus was spending time with sinners, those that they would never even spare a glance for. I can't even look at them, let alone be near them. How can you, Christ? And Jesus, he responded to their grumbling with stories. In fact, he tells 3 stories, 3 lost things: a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. And so far, you've read 2 of them this morning. Bill, did you get that I had you do the offering and do the lost coin? Did you get that connection? That's good. But the last story, we still have one more, and that one will be coming in a few minutes. And the focus of these stories isn't really on the lost things, but on the actions of the one who is looking for them. And perhaps these parables, instead of titling them the lost item, it would be better to title them the sacrificing shepherd, the persistent woman, and the shockingly good and gracious father. Because these stories, what Christ is saying is, I want you to understand why I'm sitting with these sinners. I want you to understand why this is important, and I want you to understand why you are missing out on something really special. My love for people. In each of these stories, there are a few common threads. So one of the threads is something is lost, right? Every single story has something that is lost. In the first 2 parables, it's the lost sheep or lamb and the lost coin. And both the sheep and the coin, they may on the surface appear very modest in value, that they are not worth much. But to the one searching, Christ makes it clear, they are immensely important and valuable. To us, losing a sheep might not be a big deal. I mean, think about it. You have 99 more, right? Who's going to miss one? But in this culture, it would have been unheard of to not leave the rest of your sheep in the sheepfold and go search for the other one. In fact, as a shepherd, you would be wanting to, if you could not bring the sheep back alive, you would bring back the body of the sheep to prove that you did look, that you spent the time and energy to look. If one was lost, you wouldn't hang up signs hoping they would turn out. You would go and find it. It was your livelihood, and it was prized and precious. And besides the financial cost to the shepherd, there was this personal heart cost, because when you care for something deeply, you end up caring about that something just as deeply. The ending for a lost sheep would have been certain death. Often, when a sheep was lost, if they were not killed by the predator, they had no hope. They did not have that inner sense of, I'm going to head back home. It's not like those stories we hear about some pets that can literally find their way from miles. Sheep are not wired that way. Often, what a sheep would do is just give up, lie down, and die. They would just give up. And the shepherd knew that, and he couldn't stand for it. The sheep had great value, so I will search for it. The same with the coin. 10 coins were this woman's treasure, right? That was in verses 8 and 10 of Luke 15. So losing 1 coin of the 10 was a lot. Imagine losing 1/10 of your financial whatever, the resources you have. There is no way we would say, well, hope it turns up. No, right? You would look for it. You would investigate. You would find out to make it return. This woman didn't have much, and so to her, what would appear to others to be very little had great value. And so there's this theme that things are lost, but these lost things are very important to the one who has lost them. And so we have this thread of lost things that are important, and this response to the state of being lost is to do what? To look for it, that a search begins. And we can tell the lost sheep story. I feel like it should be called the parable of the sacrificial shepherd, because that identifies the kind of search it was. It was costly. There was going to have to be sacrifices made. For the shepherd, the search would be dangerous. Going out alone in the wild could literally cost the shepherd his life. When they talk about the shepherd would lay down his life for his sheep, we've read that scripture before, that's literally what could happen. And besides his own life, putting it on the line, there are lots of smaller sacrifices. His sleep, he's going to keep looking. His comfort, rain or shine. All of those things, his energy, his time, they come second because for him, for that shepherd, the search was the priority because the lost sheep was valuable. The shepherd would not give up. He would keep going until he found the sheep. In the coin story, the search might not look like the same sacrifice. It's not like the lady is risking her life by sweeping her house, right? But the way the search was carried out tells us a lot about the woman. What does she do? She lights a lamp. We know that oil is valuable, and for her to light it until she is finished looking, she is expending other resources. And she sweeps. She looks everywhere. It's not like when I tell Jack, hey, can you go get this from up in my room? And he walks up and goes, I don't know where it is. Not saying you would ever do that, Jack. But it was more than that. She turned over every cushion. She sweeps every corner. She is sifting through the dust looking for her coin. There is great care in her search. Just like the shepherd, she is persistent. Words that might describe her search would be diligent, painstaking, devoted to completing the task that is set upon. Once again, what does it speak to? That the lost thing had great value to the one who had lost it, who was searching for it. And so we see these threads in there. We see lost things that are searched for and then found, and then what happens next? There is a celebration. The lost being restored to found, we have to celebrate that. Not just by the one who found it, but by the whole community. Did you notice that thread? I'm gathering together everybody around me, and we're all celebrating together. I found my coin. I found the lamb. The long search and all the effort of the search was swallowed up in the joy and relief of finding what was lost. And in these first two parables, Jesus, what he's doing is he's putting his heart on display. He's declaring, this is how God loves the lost. This is how God loves you. This is why he spends so much time with sinners. And that included the religious leaders. Like, he's never just talking, when he says sinners, he's not just only talking about the people that culture would say are sinners. He's talking about the religious leaders too. Jesus, these guys made his life very difficult, and he did not owe them any time. And yet he would sit there, and he would talk, and he would share, and he would instruct. He didn't shy away from it. It wasn't to teach them a lesson. It was to transform a heart. Even you can be found. Even in that moment, he was seeking those that had strayed, even those like the leaders who were purposefully walking away, because they all mattered to him. We, all people, matter to Jesus Christ. We, which is all people, are worth pursuing. The Lord pursues each and every one of us, not because of what we've done or who we are, but because the heart of the one who we belong to. He deeply loves us. And I know that these stories are very familiar, but I want you to really think about hearing that concept for the first time. God loves you and runs after you persistently. He pursues you sacrificially. That is not something to take for granted. And we are so much more than a lamb or a coin. We are his children. Which is why just two stories about lost things is incomplete. There must be the third story, the story of the lost son. So if you look with me and you go to Luke 15, verse 11, this is where the story is. And I will tell you, I know for many this is a very familiar story. So if you want to be doing a cursory glance through there, not cursing, doing a cursory glance through Luke, those passages in verse 11, that's fine. But what I'm going to share with you is a paraphrased version of it that you probably will not find in your Bible. And it's from the perspective of the son that was lost, and he's retelling what has happened. So this is what the son that was lost would share. Back then, I just wanted out. I wanted out from my older brother's shadow. I wanted out from my father's roof and his rules and the responsibility and the weight of being his son. I wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to make my own rules, and I wanted to live my own life, so I did the unthinkable. I went to my father, and I demanded that he give me my inheritance. And this was unheard of in my culture, because my request was the same as saying, Dad, I really don't want to wait for you to die to get what I'm going to get at that point. Can it just be like you have already died, and I get it now? Can I have my money now? I'll take my cash, and you can just be dead to me, and I'll go. I really didn't hate my father. I loved him, but I was young, and I was selfish and impulsive, and I just could not wait to live life on my own terms. I wanted to be free. My father gave me my inheritance, and I don't know why he did it, but at that time, I really didn't care. I had cash in my hand, and that's all I could think of, and I was off. And those were wild times. I mean, you name it, I tried it. There were no rules, no expectations, there were no consequences, so I thought. Not only did I believe that I would live forever, I also believed that my money would last forever. Guess what? It didn't. I'm still amazed at how expensive bad decisions can be, and I'm not just talking about financially. I had made friends with people who were just as selfish as I was, and when my money was gone, so were they. And so now I found myself penniless and friendless. I was completely alone. And since you probably know my story, you've probably guessed what the low point of my life was, working as a slop feeder to a herd of pigs and being so hungry and starved that I was craving to eat the food these pigs were eating. But you're wrong. That's not the lowest point. When I really hit rock bottom, it was the moment when I looked back and realized everything I had given up. I had a comfortable life back home. I had friends that I had known since I was a kid, and I had a father and a family who loved me. But I had decided to turn my back on all of that. I had been so foolish and disrespectful and arrogant. Why in the world would they ever want me to come home? But I had to try. Just as I wanted out of my father's house a few years ago, I wanted out of this lame excuse for a life that I had made for myself. Out from under the weight of my sin, out from the loneliness that gripped my heart, out from under the arrogant pride that had caused me to forsake everything and everyone I ever knew and loved. That walk back to my father's house was the loneliest and scariest walk I have ever taken. But as I got closer to the road leading to the house, I looked up and I could see an old man running towards me. And I stopped walking so I could get a better look at who the man was, and to my astonishment, I saw my father. My father was running to me. Now, in my culture, older men didn't run. It was undignified, and that would have taken a lot of effort for my dad. But my father didn't care. He didn't care how it looked to others. He didn't care if it spent all of his energy. He didn't care that I had been so disrespectful to him. He didn't care that I had caused him so much pain. All he cared about was that his beloved child had come back home, because my father didn't see a prodigal. He saw a prayer that had been answered. At that moment, I came to know grace. Though I had walked away from the shield of his protection, I had never lost his love. There was nothing I could do to atone for my sin, to make up for the pain I had caused, or to earn back my father's trust and love. But my father, he gave it to me anyway. He bestowed upon me all the privileges of being his child, and he held nothing back. And as you know, this didn't make sense to my brother. My brother thought that grace was earned by obeying all of the rules, performing all of the tasks, and never asking questions of the Father. But I know different. The grace of my Father is more about who he is than what I do. I know that I am not worthy to be my Father's son, and that makes me all the more grateful for what he has done for me. There is no greater love than my Father's love for me. That's a powerful testimony, isn't it? That I looked up and I saw my Father running to me. In the first two stories, we see the same thread. Something has been lost. And we see that in the last as well. And this time, it wasn't by accident, but the relationship between the Father and the Son had been completely lost. It had been purposefully broken by rebellion. And what is the fruit of a lost and broken relationship? What did the son experience? Just like the lamb, isolation, certain death. But thank goodness that doesn't have to be the end of our story, does it? Lost things, lost people do not have to stay lost. And that is powerful, even if it's what we deserve. And this is the thing in this story. This is another thread that's a little different in this one. The younger son isn't the only lost one. He's not the only lost son in the story. If you go to verse 25, in Luke 15, it says this. It says, "Now his older son was in the field, and just as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back home safe and sound.' But he was angry, and he refused to go in. And his father came out and entreated him," other versions say, "and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I have served you. I have never disobeyed your command, yet you gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came home, who has devoured your property with wild living, you killed the fattened calf for him.'" He's mad. He's so angry. The younger son chose to be lost. He chose to be lost by walking away. But the older son chose it too. He chose to be separate from his father, not in proximity, but their hearts were miles from one another. He spent his whole life trying to earn his father's love, and he missed completely that it was always his to have. He didn't have to do a single thing. Just you being my son means I love you. He saw his father as the scorekeeper or a taskmaster, and by doing so completely gave up the joy of just being loved in relationship with him. The older son is the embodiment of these grumbling religious leaders. You are so concerned with God things, but you have completely forgotten to know God's heart. That is a very dangerous place many people who call themselves Christians find themselves in. I do all of these things, but do I really know Jesus? I will tell you, that was me for a very long time. And I had no idea how much I was missing out. The two sons would have looked so differently from one another, right? Especially at this point when the younger son looks rough coming home. But they are both in the same condition. They are both lost. And yet, what is the thread of response to the loss that we see in all three stories? They are searched for. They are worth searching for. They are pursued with great, unmerited, gracious love. And that's why I would call this parable, instead of the prodigal son, I'd call it the shockingly good and gracious father, because the father in the story he doesn't have to, they don't deserve it, and yet he pursues both sons. Unlike the sheep and the coin who cannot return on their own, the younger son, he had to make the decision to turn around and start walking home. And yes, it was scary, but he just put one foot in front of the other. But that doesn't stop the father from every day going out and looking to the horizon. Is today the day my son comes home? And when he sees him, he does not waste a moment. He runs to his son. The son cannot even get through his speech of confession. I don't deserve this. I'll just be a servant in your house. You don't even have to love me anymore. Maybe you could like me at some point. He can't even finish the speech before the father is affirming, forgiveness is already yours. You matter. I love you, my son. Come in and be with me. The father does not meet this son with disappointment because he had chosen to be lost and say, how could you? But only the joy of claiming him as found. My son is home. But this is the thing, and we don't talk about it very often, but the father in this story also pursues the older son. He goes after him. He goes to the older son. He pleads with him. And then he listens to him. He lets the older son have his say because the Lord does listen to us and our anger, and he wants us to talk to him. But look at what the father calls his lost son, who is so angry, so unwilling to forgive, and so consumed what he feels is due to him for his right living, or another way to put it, because I've served my time. Listen to what the father calls this angry, defiant son. Verse 31, he says, my son. The father says, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and we had to be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. He is calling this defiant guy my son. He could have just stayed in the house and enjoyed the celebration and he left. He found him. He talked to him. He listened. And even though what the son was saying was so wrong and rebellious, he stood there and said, my son. What he's saying is there are a lot of people in my house right now, but none of them are you. So I'm going to sit here and talk to you until you're ready to come home, my son. All of the people in the house, they cannot take your brother's place. They cannot take your place. They cannot take the place of even one because I want you. I love you. You matter to me. Come in and be with me and experience life. John 3, 16 and 17 in the Voice paraphrase says this, and we know this truth. For God expressed his love for the world in this way. He gave his only son so that whoever believes in him, he will not face everlasting destruction, but will have everlasting life. And here's the point. God didn't send his son into the world to judge it. Instead, he is here to rescue a world headed towards destruction. Both sons, the one who thought he was on the right track and the one that definitely wasn't, both sons were headed towards destruction because they had not experienced the love of the Father. Let me tell you, that day that Maisie ran away, it was terrible. It was terrifying. We can laugh about it now and how crazy I was, but in that moment, it was awful. And my greatest concern was what is going to come of her. And it was certain destruction. Like she had no hope of most likely redeeming herself in that situation. And we felt that terror and that fear because we love her. Even though she's just our dog, we love her. And thankfully that day, Josh Morton, who watched her before, he saw her and she recognized him and he ran to her and he picked her up and he put her back in my arms. And as I'm carrying this hot, sweaty, dumb dog home and she's wrapping her paws around my neck and tears are streaming down my face because first of all, I'm just so exhausted, right? It's like the adrenaline has just went poof and I'm done. So it's like sweat and tears and everything. It was a mess, okay? So this is happening, and I'm carrying this dog home, and she's literally wrapping her paws around my neck, and I'm whispering to her, I love you. Will you please just stay with us? Like, I love you. Like, she doesn't know what I'm saying, but I couldn't help myself, but in that moment, just say, I love you so much. Like, don't do this again. I love you. Stay. I'm bringing you home. And once again, I know that's a silly illustration, but that's what the Lord does. Like he literally just wants to carry us and bring us home and say, just stay with me. I love you. Don't take one step away from me. Take a fresh step towards me. Because my friends, if we're not incrementally taking more steps towards Jesus, what we're doing is we're taking more steps away from Jesus until eventually we're running. And we have no idea and we're blind to what the consequences are. And he's saying, just be with me. And this is something I think that's interesting. In this moment, the father's pursuit in that last story looks really different, doesn't it? He doesn't go into the bushes and find the sheep. He doesn't sweep anywhere. He's not going out of his home to do the search. He loves his son enough to let him leave and make the choice to leave. But then he loves him enough to wait earnestly to welcome him back when he finally discovers, I need my family. I need my father. But this is something I was thinking about this week. This was also an opportunity for the older son to know the father's heart. Because while the father is standing on the porch waiting for the son, there's no reason why his older son could not go out and be the ambassador to say, I'm going to show you the way home. The older son could have taken it upon himself, because of my love for the father, because of my love for my brother, I can't just stay here and wait. I'm going to pursue and show him how to come home so that my father can redeem him. This was an opportunity for him to pursue. The father could have been saying, I will be ready to welcome and redeem your brother, but why don't you leave the house now and go find him? Go and pursue him and show him how to come home. Tell him that it is possible, once again, to choose sonship over sin. Extend him forgiveness. Show him my love by living it out. That walk home does not have to be scary and lonely for him. You could walk with him. So go to him now. If the praise band wants to come up. While these are passages that we know and we are familiar with, there's great deep wealth in them, isn't there? First of all, I would say this. If you feel like you're hearing this, especially this last parable, and you find yourself as the prodigal son, the son who has chosen to walk away, completely sever ties, and you're trying to figure out how do I do this? Someone today, if you come and pray, someone today will show you the way home. Someone today will go out, will come to you and say, this is what let's talk about this together. I can share with you about the Father's heart for you. This does not have to be lonely. This does not have to be scary. So if that is something you need to experience today, I just want to go home. Come and take a few moments to pray about that this morning, to place your faith and trust in Jesus Christ and experience a love that is bigger than you can even imagine. What I would say is that if you feel like you are the older brother and you're inside his house all the time and yet you feel like you're not, you feel like it's stale, you feel like I'm just taking more and more steps farther away, you feel like this should be more fair, my life should be easier, I should be getting more rewards, and you get all built up and angst about that, today is a day to pray about that with the Lord, because he's saying, I just want to show you my heart. You are in my house and yet miles from my heart. Today is a day that we don't have to be that far from him anymore. And someone will come and pray with you too. But I would say for all of us, if we know we are in his home, if we know his heart, we should be pursuing this way. At the beginning, he says, suppose you lost a sheep. Suppose you lost a coin. He's saying, this is for you to experience as well. Go and pursue. It will be sacrificial, but go and do it because it's how I pursued you. Go and pursue. You will have to be persistent. You might have to sweep up some dust. You might have to look deeply to find the lost, but go and do that because I did that for you. And just like what the older son could have done, go and find your brother, your sister, the stranger that is lost, and show them the way home. That is something we can pray about today, that there is a love that these folks may not have ever experienced before, and they are lost, wild, completely without any hope, and that we can show them there is hope. There is a possibility of salvation. And we can pray for that this morning too, and pray for the lost, and pray for the opportunities to show them the way to Jesus. So there's lots to pray about, isn't there? And just to thank him for his great love. And so as we sing this morning, I invite you to take some time to pray. Sing the words if you want. More important that you pray. More important that you talk to the Father. Have that conversation first. Either here at the altar, someone will come pray with you, or at your seats. Why don't we sing and pray together?